In today's class, we will see about another type of tissue called as connective tissue. Unlike epithelial tissue, connective tissue consists of many number of cells, and the intercellular space is more when compared to that of epithelial tissue. In the intercellular space, there is intercellular matrix which is abundantly seen in the connective tissue, and this is also a differing factor from that of epithelial tissue.
Tissue. Group of tissues in the body that maintains the form of the body and its organs and provides cohesion and internal support. The connective tissue includes several types of fibrous tissues that vary only in their density and cellularity, as well as more specialized and recognizable variants. Connective tissues can be divided into three types. 1. Loose connective tissue. 2. Dense connective tissue. 3. Specialized.
There are different types of connective tissue, and based upon the function of this tissue, the intercellular matrix differs, which gives a dense or a rigid nature to a jelly-like nature to the tissue. The main function of connective tissue is that it is involved in binding or structural support, protection, transport, and insulation. Now, before going to see what are the different types of connective tissues, let's see what are the different types of cells that are present in the connective tissue. Whereas in the epithelial tissue, we have seen the whole tissue consists of a similar type of cells. Either they might be stone-shaped cells, or they might be cuboidal shaped cells, or they might be columnar shaped cells. Whereas in the connective tissue, there are 5 different types of cells that are usually present in the connective tissue, and the number of these cells differs in different types of connective tissue. So they are fibroblasts, fat cells, mast cells, macrophages, and leukocytes. These are the 5 different types of connective tissue cells. Now let's see them in detail. First, we will see about fibroblasts. As connective tissue is the most abundant tissue in the body that is present in almost all the organs, fibroblasts are the most abundant type of cells that are present in this connective tissue. Fibroblasts are generally involved in synthesis of various fibers called as collagen fibers and elastic fibers. Apart from this, these cells are also involved in production of extracellular matrix. Generally, the widely dispersed connective tissue cells will adhere to this extracellular matrix, especially collagen and elastic fibers, for support. Some very fine collagen fibers are called as reticulin fibers in those tissues which are highly active, such as liver and reticular tissue. Fibroblasts are very active during the time of tissue repair, that is, in wound healing. These collagen fibers, which are produced by fibroblasts, they are involved in binding the two edges of cut surfaces. and they are also involved in production of granulation tissue during the time of tissue repair. Apart from this, the fibroblasts also shrink the tissues as they are repaired, and in some cases they also might interfere with the function of that particular organ. The next type of connective tissue cells are fat cells. Fat cells are also called as adipocytes, and these fat cells vary in number in different types of connective tissue. The fat cells are of different sizes based upon the amount of fat it consists of, and these fat cells are abundant in adipose tissue, and excessive fat is necessary for insulation, which is also one of the function of connective tissues. Now let's see about the other type of connective tissue cells, which are called as macrophages. Macrophages are large irregular shaped cells, and these cells consist of granules within their cytoplasm. Some of these macrophages are fixed by getting adhered to the collagen fibers, whereas some macrophages are motile, and these macrophages play an important role in body's defense mechanism. These macrophages are phagocytic in nature, and they are involved in phagocytosis of cell debris, bacteria, or any foreign bodies which are ingested into the body. They form a part of monocyte macrophage system, and there are different types of macrophages in different tissues in the body. For example, monocytes in the blood, Kupffer cells in the liver, sinus lining cells in the lymph nodes and spleen, and microglial cells in the brain. The other connective tissue cells are leukocytes. Leukocytes are also called as white blood cells, and these are once again classified into agranulocytes and granulocytes. Generally, leukocytes are less in number in the connective tissues, but during the time of infection, a large number of neutrophils, which are a type of granulocytes, will migrate to the site of infection. These leukocytes also play an important role in body's defense mechanism. Plasma cells, which are produced by B lymphocytes, which are a type of agranulocytes, are involved in production of antibodies against the antigens which are ingested into the body. Now let's see about the last type of connective tissue cell, that is mast cell. Mast cells are similar to that of basophil leukocytes. Basophils are also a type of granulocytes. Basophils also are a type of granulocytes. Mast cells are abundantly seen in loose connective tissue. They are present under the fibrous capsule of liver or spleen, and they are also present around the blood vessels. Mast cells consist of various granules, and these granules consist of various factors such as histamine and heparin. Rupture of these mast cells during the time of any allergic reaction or tissue damage will lead to release of these histamine and heparin. Histamine, it is a mediator of hypersensitivity reactions, and inflammation. Whereas heparin is involved in preventing the blood clot. Whereas heparin is involved in preventing blood clotting. Heparin will increase the blood flow to the inflamed tissues so that the oxygen and glucose supply to that inflamed tissue is not affected. Apart from this, it also causes increased flow of leukocytes to the site of this inflammation. These are different types of connective tissue cells.
Connective tissue is the most widespread and diverse of all the tissues, and they have three main components: cells, protein fibers, and ground substance. Ground substance is produced by connective tissue cells. It is a non-cellular material, and it can be solid, semi-solid, or viscous, meaning thick and sticky. The cells and protein fibers reside within this ground substance, and the ground substance and protein fibers together are often referred to as the extracellular matrix. There are many functions that different types of connective tissues perform, such as in many cases it provides protection for internal organs. For instance, the skull protects the brain. It can also provide structural support, as bones provide the framework for the body. Connective tissues connect and bind certain structures. For instance, ligaments bind bone to bone, and tendons bind muscles to bones. It also provides for storage of some nutrients, as bones store calcium and phosphorus. It's important in transportation, as blood, which is a connective tissue, transports nutrients, gases, and waste throughout the body. And connective tissue helps with immune function, as many connective tissues contain white blood cells that protect the body from invaders.
Now, let's see what are the different types of connective tissues. There are 7 different types of connective tissues. They are loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, adipose tissue, reticular tissue, cartilage, bone, and blood. So now let's see about them in detail.
Three main classifications: connective tissue proper, supporting connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue. Connective tissue proper, which is sometimes referred to as fibrous because it has many fibers in its extracellular matrix, is divided into 2 subgroups based on the proportions of cells, fibers, and ground substance. Subgroup 1 is loose connective tissue.
Loose connective tissue, or this is also called as areolar tissue. And this loose connective tissue is the most generalized tissue, and it is most widely present in the body. So almost all organs will have this loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue is also called as areolar tissue, and this is the most generalized tissue in the body. And this is also the most abundant tissue, that each and every organ has this loose connective tissue. It consists of various cells such as fibroblasts, macrophages, adipocytes, and mast cells, which are dispersed apart with elastic and collagen fibers in the matrix. And this intercellular matrix is semi-solid in nature in the loose connective tissue, so which gives adequate elasticity and tensile strength to the tissue. Now let's see about the distribution of this loose connective tissue. So loose connective tissue is found under the skin. So it is present as supporting tissue in the blood vessels and nerves. It also supports the alimentary canal. It is present in secretory tissues such as glands, and it is also present between the muscle tissue.
Connective tissue. 1. Loose connective tissue. Loosely arranged cells and fibers in a semi-fluid substance is distributed all over the body and support tissues and organs from strain and displacement. Example, areolar tissue and adipose tissue. Areolar tissue. It is present beneath the skin, serves as a support framework for epithelium. It contains fibroblasts, macrophages, and
it has fewer cells and fibers and more ground substance than subgroup 2, dense connective tissue. There are three main types of loose connective tissue. Areolar connective tissue has a viscous ground substance with both collagen and elastic protein fibers. It is highly vascularized, meaning it has a good blood supply, and it contains a large number of fibroblast cells, which produce many components of the extracellular matrix. It surrounds certain organs and blood vessels and binds skin.
Now let's see the other type of connective tissue, that is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is also called as fat tissue in common terms, and this tissue consists of more number of adipocytes which are present in the loose areolar connective tissue. There are two types of adipose tissues, white adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue. White adipose tissue is present in the adults, and this constitutes to about 20 to 25% of the body weight in a normal healthy adult, and the amount of this white adipose tissue might be more in those people who are obese, and it might be less in those people who are underweight. These adipocytes consist of fat globules, and generally they are involved in insulation and also as an energy store. Kidneys and eyeballs are surrounded by this white adipose tissue, and they give protection to these organs. The other type of adipose tissue is brown adipose tissue. This type of tissue is present abundantly in newborns, and brown adipose tissue has extensive capillary network when compared to that of white adipose tissue. Whereas metabolism of brown adipose tissue will produce less amount of energy and more amount of heat when compared to other type of tissue.
mast cells. Adipose tissue. It is located mainly beneath the skin. Cells of this tissue are specialized to store fat. The excess of nutrients converted into fats and having large storing capacity in this tissue.
Adipose connective tissue is also highly vascularized, and it is comprised primarily of adipocytes, which are fat cells and have very little extracellular matrix. Adipocytes are filled with fat droplets, which push the nucleus toward the plasma membrane. There are two types of adipose connective tissue, white and brown. Brown adipose tissue is found more in infants and newborns, and white adipose tissue stores energy, insulates some organs, and provides a cushion against shocks to the body. Adipose connective tissue is located throughout the body, as it can be found under the skin and surrounding various organs.
Now let's see about reticular tissue. Reticular tissue consists of semi-solid matrix, and this reticular tissue consists of reticulin fibers, which we have seen are produced by the fibroblasts. So these are very fine collagen fibers. Apart from this fibroblasts, reticular tissue consists of reticulocytes and white blood cells such as monocytes and lymphocytes. reticular tissue is present in lymph nodes and also in all the organs of the lymphatic system.
Reticular connective tissue has a viscous ground substance with a branching network of reticulin fibers within it. Reticular cells and the fibers provide a supportive framework in the spleen, lymph nodes, and bone marrow. Now for dense connective tissue, which also has three main types.
Now let's see about the other important type of connective tissue, that is dense connective tissue. So the dense connective tissue, unlike the loose connective tissue, or as the name suggests, it is more rigid than that of other types of connective tissues. There are two different types of dense connective tissues. They are fibrous tissue and elastic tissue. Fibrous tissue consists of few fibrocytes and fibroblasts. Fibrocytes are old and inactive fibroblasts, and there are abundant number of collagen fibers which are closely packed together as bundles. And these fibroblasts, they are present in small numbers and are arranged serially in between these bundles. Because of its rigidity, the fibroblasts will give adequate strength to that particular tissue. When coming to this distribution of fibrous tissue, they form the ligaments which form attachment between the two bones. They are also found around the muscle fibers as sheaths which are called as muscle fascia. So which later they extend to form the tendon, giving the muscle attachment with the tough bone. Fibrous tissue also forms an outer covering of various organs such as kidney and brain. It also forms the outer protective covering of the bone, and it is called as periosteum. The other type of dense connective tissue is elastic tissue. Elastic tissue also consists of fibroblasts, but these fibroblasts, they secrete more number of elastic fibers, and these type of tissue, they have a considerable extent of ability to stretch and recoil. And this elastic tissue is abundantly found in those regions which require extension and recoiling. Example, in large blood vessels which are to be dilated during the time of increased blood flow. They are present in trachea, bronchi, and lungs.
2. Dense connective tissue. In this tissue, collagen fibers appears abundantly in the form of bundles and are placed regularly between the cells. It is again divided into two types. A. Dense, regular connective tissue. The collagen fibers are present in rows between many parallel bundles of fibers. Example, tendons. White collagen fibers connect muscle to bone. Ligaments. Yellow elastic fibers connect bone to bone, two bones. B. Dense, irregular connective tissue. It has fibroblasts and many fibers, mostly collagen, present in the skin.
Dense regular connective tissue consists of tightly packed parallel collagen fibers with a limited amount of ground substance and fibroblast cells squeezed between the fiber layers. This tissue does not have a good blood supply, so when injured it takes a long time to heal. This tissue is found in tendons and ligaments as it can withstand a lot of stress. Dense irregular connective tissue consists of collagen fibers that are clumped together forming an irregular pattern. It also contains fibroblast cells and has more ground substance and a much richer blood supply than dense regular connective tissue. This tissue can handle stress in multiple directions and is found in the dermis of the skin and in the periosteum, which covers bone. Elastic connective tissue consists of densely packed elastic fibers, with fibroblasts scattered throughout. It is found in the trachea, vocal cords, and walls of some arteries.
Now, let's see about the other type of connective tissue, that is cartilage. Cartilage is more firmer than any other connective tissue, and the cells which are present in this cartilage are called as chondrocytes, and which are embedded in the extracellular matrix, which consists mainly of various fibers. There are three different types of cartilages. They are hyaline cartilage, fibrous cartilage, and elastic fibrocartilage. Now let's see them in detail. Hyaline cartilage, it is a smooth bluish tissue which consists of chondrocytes arranged in groups, and these are called as cell nests, and these are present within the collagen fibers. Hyaline cartilage is more denser and it gives slight flexibility. When coming to the distribution of this hyaline cartilage, it is present in those regions such as the ends of long bones which form joints, and they are also present in regions where the ribs are attached to the sternum. They also form the cartilages of larynx, trachea. The other type of cartilage is fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is denser and slightly flexible with more number of collagen fibers and the cells which are widely distributed, unlike the hyaline cartilage where the cells are grouped and appear as nests. This fibrocartilage is found in various regions, such as they form pads between the bodies of vertebrae where they are called as intervertebral discs, whereas in various articulating surfaces such as knee joint they form semilunar cartilages, and they also forms the rims of bony sockets of shoulder and hip joints, which leads to deepening of the socket without restricting the movement of the joints. The other type of cartilage is elastic fibrocartilage, and it has considerable amount of elasticity because of the elastic fibers which are present and the widely distributed cells. The elastic fibrocartilage, it gives flexibility and also it maintains the shape of that particular tissue. Example, the pinna or ear lobe consists of elastic fibrocartilage. The epiglottis, which covers the trachea, also is an example of elastic fibrocartilage.
3. Specialized connective tissue. Cartilage, bones, and blood are various types of specialized connective tissues. A. Cartilage. The cartilage is made up of cells, chondrocytes. The study of cartilage is chondrology. The cartilage is divided into 4 types based on the composition of intercellular matrix. They are hyaline, elastic, fibrous, and calcified.
Next, let's look at the second classification of connective tissues, supporting connective tissue, which also has 2 subgroups, cartilage and bone, with cartilage having a semi-solid matrix and bone having a solid matrix. There are 3 main types of cartilage. Hyaline cartilage consists of chondrocyte cells which support and repair the cartilage matrix, and these cells occupy small spaces called lacunae and are scattered throughout the matrix. It has a poor blood supply, causing injuries to heal slowly and sometimes not at all. Hyaline cartilage is the most common type of cartilage, and it caps the bones of synovial joints, is found in the nose, and in the respiratory passage. Fibrocartilage consists of dense, wavy-looking collagen fibers, and it too has chondrocyte cells and lacunae. Fibrocartilage acts as a great shock absorber and is resistant to compression. It is the toughest form of cartilage, and it is what makes up the discs of the spine and the meniscus in the knee joint. The third type of cartilage is elastic cartilage. Elastic cartilage contains some collagen fibers and a high number of elastic fibers, and it also has chondrocyte cells and lacunae. This cartilage has a high degree of flexibility and can be found in the external ear and in the epiglottis, which prevents swallowed food from entering the trachea.
The other type of connective tissue is bone. Bone, it is the most rigid type of connective tissue, and it consists of various cells called as osteocytes, which are widely dispersed within the collagen fibers, and these collagen fibers are once again reinforced by the inorganic salts such as calcium and phosphate, which gives them their dense and rigidity. And the function of bone, it is widely known that it gives structural support to the body or to the organ. It gives attachment to the muscles and tendons. It is necessary for the movement of various parts of the body or the whole body. There are 2 different types of bones based upon their structure. They are compact bone and spongy bone. Compact bone is more denser, whereas spongy bone, which is also called as cancellous bone, is having a porous appearance within its matrix.
B. Bones. Bone is a hard skeletal tissue. Study of bone tissue is called osteology. Bone is composed of cells, fibers and matrix. The matrix is collineous calcified, hard and constituted by minerals and salts such as calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. Bones contain matrix, ossein, and osteocytes are present in the spaces called lacuna. Limb bones, such as the long bones of the legs, serve weight-bearing functions. Also interact with skeletal muscles to bring out movements. The bones take up the functions such as 1. Support to the body. 2. Production of erythrocytes and white blood cells from the red bone marrow. 3. Protecting vital parts such as heart and brain. 4. Giving shape to the organism. 5. Storage of fat in yellow bone marrow with the advancement of age.
Bone is the second type of supporting connective tissue. It's more solid than cartilage but less flexible, and it has a rich blood supply. The extracellular matrix of bone consists of collagen fibers and mineral salt crystals and bone cells called osteocytes that occupy small spaces called lacunae and are scattered throughout the matrix. Bones provide support and protection and also provide a point of attachment for muscles. There are 2 main bone tissue types, compact and spongy. Compact bone forms cylindrical structures called osteons, which look like rings, and they surround a central canal that houses nerves and blood vessels. Spongy bone has a lattice-like look to it, and it is located in the interior of a bone, and it is strong but lightweight.
The last type of connective tissue is blood. Blood is the fluid connective tissue that is present in the body, and it constantly flows within the blood vessels, and it is mainly involved in transport of substances such as gases, nutrients, hormones, heat, protective substances, and clotting factors. Blood, it consists of plasma and cellular fraction. The cellular fraction consists of different types of blood cells which can be categorized into erythrocytes, thrombocytes, and leukocytes. Erythrocytes are also called as red blood cells. Thrombocytes are also called as platelets, whereas leukocytes can once again be categorized into granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes consists of granules within the cells, whereas agranulocytes do not consist of such granules. The neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, they form the granulocytes, whereas the lymphocytes and monocytes, they form the agranulocytes. Plasma consists of plasma proteins, clotting factors, electrolytes, hormones, and some dissolved substances, and blood is very essential in communicating between the tissues within the body.
Next up is the third classification of connective tissues, fluid connective tissue, which also has two subgroups, blood and lymph. Blood tissue is comprised of formed elements and has a liquid ground substance called plasma. The formed elements include red and white blood cells and platelets. The plasma contains proteins as well. The red blood cells transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. The white blood cells protect the body from foreign invaders. Platelets help with clotting the blood. And the plasma transports nutrients, wastes, and hormones throughout the body. Lymph originates from the interstitial fluid that surrounds tissue cells, and it transports fats and white blood cells throughout the body. And that be the basics on connective tissue.
These are the various connective tissue that are present in the body.